So number one recruit in the country, Jackson Cantwell, is going to make his college decision today. He is going to commit to a program. And the crystal balls project that he is going to go to Miami. Now, we are recording this before he makes that determination of where he wants to go to college initially. And I think, first of all, I think that's a vernacular we need to start using. It's where they're going to spend their first year of college, because just the sheer amount of players that transfer after their first year or transfer in their entire college career is entirely, I don't think it's entirely too high. It's just really high. And so we keep saying, he's going to decide where he's going to spend his next 4 years. No, he's likely going to decide where he's going to spend his next 8 to 9 months is what a high school kid is doing. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the topic of today's episode. There are so many people who are so adamant that this would not be the way it's shaking out, that Miami would not be even an option in Jackson Cantwell's recruitment if it was not for NIL. And I think partly that's ridiculous, because when you look at it, when you think about it, what do college football recruits place a high value on, especially in today's day and age? It's tradition, development, and money. Where am I going to go that I'm going to get seen by as many people as possible, both NFL scouts and also fans, eyeballs, etc.? Where am I going to go that can give me the most NIL money? And where can I go that I'm going to get developed to go to the NFL? Those are things that matter. I don't know if it's that in that order as a generalization of today's high school football recruits, but those things matter. What does Miami have? Tradition. Undeniably, Miami has tradition. Furthermore, what else does Miami have? A pretty decent NIL war chest to play with. And then they develop players for the NFL. The number one overall pick in the NFL draft a couple of weeks ago went to Miami. Now, the argument could easily be, yeah, he also went to Incarnate Word in Washington State. But you know what? They didn't say quarterback, Incarnate Word, Washington State, in Miami when Cam Ward got drafted first overall. They said Cam Ward, quarterback, University of Miami. So there's this long history and lineage of Miami putting players into the NFL. There's also now a pretty long list of Miami being a player in the NIL space. And the argument is that that's the only reason that this highly touted, highly sought-after recruit would consider Miami over the likes of Georgia and Ohio State, who are in his final group. And I think that's just partly ridiculous. One, there's nothing against the rules of playing at NIL. And I'm so tired of hearing that as an excuse of, well, Ohio State only won the national championship because they bought their team. Okay, well, first of all, that's a stupid argument. Secondly, there's nothing against the rules that say you can't do that. It is now allowed. Hell, you could argue it's encouraged. And so this idea that because Miami is, I don't know, operating under the rule book is preposterous. Furthermore, Jackson Cantwell is a kid from rural Missouri. If you were to ask kids in the Midwest, what are the most luxurious cities in America? Lights, glitz, glamour, pretty girls, fast cars. You know how deep Miami is on that list? Probably number 2 to a high school kid. The idea that a high school kid wants to spend potentially a year, 2, maybe 3 in South Florida is not ridiculous. And so you mix all of those things together. And I can't help but scratch my head at the response and the reaction from people like, well, if it wasn't for NIL, that wouldn't even be an option. But it is for NIL. There is NIL. You can't just disassociate that equation, that part of the equation. Like, you can't just say, well, if it wasn't for that, because it does exist. It's allowed. It's there. And I hate that argument because I think it's lazy, first of all. Eric Dickerson got a gold Trans Am from the school he didn't go to in the late 1970s. Do you think that this hasn't been a thing in college football, college sports, but especially college football, for a really long time? NIL money has existed in the sport for a really long time. We just didn't call it that. There wasn't a name for it, and you weren't confronted with it. Everybody dealt with this. It's an argument I've made before of, like, the idea that Cam Newton's dad asked Mississippi State for $180,000 to go to Mississippi State and then went to Auburn for free. Don't spit on my cupcake and tell me it's frosting. This has existed for a really long time in the sport. And the idea that we're now confronted with it means that it's this whole new ball game that everybody has to play with just is not true. If you believe the reports, and I do, that Tennessee was putting money in McDonald's bags and handing it to recruits before NIL, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Yeah, I believe that because it happens. The $100 handshakes used to be these kids are getting $100 handshakes. No, they were getting $1,000 handshakes. They were getting $10,000 handshakes. Holy hell, Reggie Bush had a beachfront mansion. This is not new, especially for the biggest and best players and the biggest and best recruits in the sport. So we have to stop, or at least call out, hey, if this is happening, one, it's okay. It's okay if Jackson Cantwell wants to prioritize NIL money. Two, I think you can make the argument that he's only going there for NIL if he was considering Florida Atlantic or Florida International or South Florida or insert other kind of group of five or D-tier Power 4 program. If it was, hey, the finalists are Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Wake Forest is putting up the best NIL package, then I think yes. Then I think you can sit there and say, I don't think that this would be the teams that would make the group of finalists if there wasn't NIL. But to do it to Miami, a team with national championships over the course of multiple decades, with Heisman Trophy winners and multiple first-round NFL draft picks, to treat Miami as if they are some also-ran run-of-the-mill program. Now, has Miami fallen on hard times over the course of the last 2 decades or so? Yes. Should they have made the college football playoff last year? With the talent they had? Probably. They didn't do that. They didn't get it done, and that's something that they'll have to figure out and rectify and deal with. But Miami isn't beaten into the dirt in some undesirable location for college football recruits that you've got. The only way you're going to get them there is to pay them lots of money. That is a poppycock malarkey statement. It just doesn't ring true, and it feels like it shows an almost ignorance of, one, the sport, two, the history of the sport in the history of Miami football, and then three, just kind of basic understanding of what 18-year-old kid from rural Missouri would find interesting in a college football program. He'd rather go to Athens, Georgia than Miami. Come on now. It's not difficult to connect those dots of why he might be interested in that school outside of if they've got a great NIL package. What reason is there to say no? What reason is there to say no to that? Well, they're not going to compete for championships. They might if I feel like I'm the best recruit in the country and they're going to add the best recruit in the country to their program. That feels pretty easy to look at that and forecast and go, okay, we could be pretty good here over the course of the next couple of years. It's not difficult, but to just solely put it at the feet of if it wasn't for NIL, I think it's a dumb argument, one, because there is NIL. Like it, hate it, respect it, doesn't matter. Indifferent, it exists. And we have to stop doing this over and over and over again. NIL's here. NIL matters. And Miami football matters. They're doing everything they can in their power to get back to what they believe is their rightful place in the college football mountaintop. Yes, things went poorly there for a while. I've mentioned this before that I don't think it's a coincidence that there were teams that were independents for a really long time that are no longer in the upper echelons or at the top of the college football world once they joined conferences. You don't think that that is a coincidence. Your Florida States, Miami's, Penn States, schools like that for a very long time were A-list programs, joined conferences, and now aren't exactly at the stature they once were. I don't think that's a coincidence. But Miami is undeniably getting better under Mario Cristobal. And if they are the complete package for some high school recruit, I think it's ridiculous to try to run them down for making what they feel like is the best decision for their future. I'm a big don't tweet at high school kids guy on don't tweet at kids on Twitter. Because choosing your college, even if it's just your first year, even if the kid decides to transfer out after his freshman season, it's still a really important decision. And he probably has to figure out a lot more things about his future than just the best thing for your favorite football program. So don't tweet at kids, but maybe most importantly, stop playing if it wasn't for NIL, unless it's legitimately if it wasn't for NIL. The idea that Miami is in the running for a 5-star blue chip recruit, but they shouldn't be along the likes of the Ohio States, Oklahomas, Georgias, Texas, Notre Dames of the world, just feels incorrect to me. Want to know your thoughts? Jackson Cantwell just going for the NIL? Is that all that matters to kids today? I don't think so, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.